Howdy, folks. It's a podcast with two white guys. Never seen that before, have you? But, seriously, folks, we're here today starting kind of a podcast, kind of not. Today we're setting it up in a podcast style. Usually we won't be all like this. Usually we'll be doing this remotely and having a little bit less equipment here, but we thought we'd go big for the first one. So this is a little behind-the-scenes podcast that we're doing, where we're going to talk about things we've done. A topic no podcast has ever covered. Us. We're going to talk about some of our history with filmmaking, some of our behind-the-scenes events, just some general stories we think people might want to know. So if you're here, settle in, folks, and let's get started. So if you don't know, I'm Thomas.
And I'm Christopher.
We're the founders of TSC Studios, and we've been doing this many, many years now, since we were kids. Because we've actually known each other since kindergarten. And, well, that's where our story's going to begin. So this first episode is called The Roosevelt Years. And it's going to be about our beginnings when we went to Roosevelt School. Of course, that school isn't even around anymore. Well, the building still is, but the school itself isn't. But we're going to talk about sort of who we were before we started making videos. So, we have some pictures here as well. You can kind of see the vibe of our kindergarten classroom and some kind of stuff that we got into back then. So we met then, and most of our days consisted of us having these call and response things that we would do. We would often have these repetitive phrases that we would say back and forth to each other. You know, a couple of neurodivergent 5-year-olds back in the day. That sort of very typical bonding for them, wouldn't you say?
That's right.
Yeah. So that's sort of how it was. And while it was an important first step in our early childhood bonding, it wasn't so great for our teachers, who were a bit annoyed with it. And because of that, we were not allowed to be placed in the same class from then on.
At least for the time being.
Yes, and we'll get to that later. So let's see what kind of other things we got into now. So the picture I showed there is just kind of a Thanksgiving thing that happened in the classroom. One of the first times we went outside the school was your 6th birthday party at Chuck E. Cheese. And as you can see from these pictures, you know, we were quite a bit smaller then. And you were small enough where you had to stand on top of the basketball game thing to even get the basketballs in.
I'm also going to presume they had to physically lift me and put them in there themselves.
Probably so. Though I bet nowadays you'd be able to touch that thing without even getting off the floor.
That's true, because I'm a 6'5" guy.
Yes. Here's our Christmas concerts when we went over to Washington, another school that doesn't exist anymore. And even though we weren't in the same class anymore, we still saw each other at recess pretty much every day.
Pretty much, yes.
Yep, outside the old Roosevelt parking lot. That's kind of how it went. There was some playground equipment there at the time. But if you see that wall there, one of the recess games we'd play was called Secret Enter. We don't remember too much about it, but we do remember our names that we gave each other. Tumpa and Shunta.
He was Tumpa, I was Shunta.
It was some kind of secret agent thing, right?
Yeah, it was like a secret agent thing.
Kind of an early precursor to who we would be in our Sticky Situation films about 10 years later.
Right. Hey, even back then, we were coming up with different things and giving them to ourselves.
Yes, we were always making up our own games to play and kind of playing them with whatever around. Very imaginative, very much using what we had. These are all skills we would apply later in life and still do to this day. Because, well, we're trying to make films these days with what we have around us. And, of course, it's a lot easier now with the digital equipment. But we have always been the kind of people to make stuff happen wherever we were.
Exactly. We just utilize the things that we have around us.
And funny thing, in my first grade class, there were 2 people we'd get to collaborate with later, Kevin and Abby. We worked with them in some videos later on, especially Kevin. He was introduced to us with Tyler, and he was involved in a lot of our films, which we will talk about on another episode of this show. But yeah, lots of adventures we'd go on 10 years later after this stuff. One distinct memory I have was there was this this awkward third floor back at Roosevelt. There were only 2 classrooms up there. It was above the gym, I think, and you'd have to walk up these stairs to get there. And one of them was your first grade classroom.
Yep.
And I remember the day before Christmas break, we would rotate around to the other classrooms and each make a Christmas ornament in them. And when I got to your classroom, I believe I sat at your desk and looked out the window at this fire escape that was out there, and it was snowing, and there were these thick snowflakes coming down. And I don't know why, but that's a distinct memory of mine. And I remember doing that in first grade. Now around second grade, we had another recess game called Snow Pile House. I have a record of this right here. I made this little card. It's even dated December 16th, 2005. And it kind of goes over what we would do, and there's some pictures that go along with this too, because you can see the space we had along the railing, along the fence there, behind the playground, by the parking lot, and we would run back and forth through that area like it was some kind of wind tunnel, because really the snowplows couldn't get back there, because as you can kind of see, there was a playground right there, and then the piles of snow would be in the parking lot on either side of it, so we would run between them, and there would be like a hole in one of them, a little hole, and we'd try to play golf in there. We'd make golf balls out of snowballs, and we'd kick them into the hole, or we would go over to that basketball thing, like the basketball funnel thing, where you're supposed to throw the basketball up into the funnel, but we would throw snowballs into it.
Right, which if you look very closely, you can see in the foreground.
In the background of that one, yeah. And then, there's us there's us kind of this was a pretty typical scene for us out at recess, really. I mean, of course, our parents were there that day taking this picture, but that was a pretty typical scene for us. And it's also noteworthy. We're there with one of our friends from back then, Annika, who she was nonverbal, and we were in a group of throughout our school years. We were in a group of fellow neurodivergent people who, back then we were the special kids.
Right.
Things weren't as nuanced as they are now. But another noteworthy thing is because one of us was nonverbal, and the device she was using to speak through, this AAC device, was very thick, as I remember it, and it had I remember it always needed to be plugged in because the battery would hardly last at all. That's just what I remember about it. But most noteworthy is that Annika also joined us later on for our senior prom. And by that time, she, in addition to being able to speak a little bit, had an iPad that she would speak through. And I remember just looking at the iPad and thinking, man, has technology come a long way just in the times we've been in school, especially for assistive technology as well, coming such a long way just in the years we were in school.
Not only that, as we got older, we got to a point where we were able to assist her as well.
Yeah, we could. Yeah, as we got older, we could assist other people who might have needed it because we'd been in the group long enough to be able to recognize, and be able to recognize other people's setback to being able to help them through it. So I think, being part of, being in that group definitely gave us more than the skills it was initially intended to give us.
Oh yeah, for example, I've got a story regarding Annika that I think you guys will find interesting. So one time, this was back when we were in high school. I don't remember how long ago it was exactly, but I do remember there was a day where she and I were on the bus going home. And I don't know why, I don't know how this happened, but for some reason, the bus driver didn't know where she lived. And he or she was trying to figure out where Annika lived. But I knew that I had passed by Annika's house a couple times. And while it was very difficult, I had to dive into my memory and pull her address out of my head. It was like I said, it was very difficult to do, but somehow I pulled it off.
Yes. And another noteworthy thing is this picture here is of the 3 writers of the Sticky Situation 1. So the first sticky situation film, yeah, the three of us would come back together in 8th grade to write what would later become the sticky situation film. And that of course is another episode of this here show when we're going to talk about how that came to be, because that really was our first film that we ever made.
Our first actual film.
Yeah. So the people we met through these school years would come back in our lives in ways we probably never would have expected. And that's going to be a recurring theme. That's why we're starting with the earliest story, because in fact, in these early school years, we would meet some people who would come back around later as important parts of our film life. We've already seen 3 of them in the pictures here. So, also in 2nd grade, we were in a trailer. So back at Roosevelt, in around 2005, things were getting a bit crowded, and so they brought in this trailer, which I guess had been there for a few years at that point, but that's not the point. It was like a 2-room schoolhouse that was in the parking lot of the bigger school, and we both had 2nd grade there. Me in one classroom, him in the other, and I mean, we didn't mind going to school in a trailer because it was the only part of Roosevelt that had air conditioning.
Right, because the building is so old.
But outside of school life, there was a couple other things that we did. I mentioned your birthday parties at Chuck E. Cheese. Mine at the bowling alley were also quite interesting. Here we see me in a money machine, with I'm supposed to grab the money as it blows around in there.
And I'm over there just doing whatever.
Yeah, just hanging by the edge of it, I guess. And then some other pictures there from those birthday parties. They used to have this party room back there. There were 2 small party rooms that were painted, had these painted walls, and they had black lights in there too. And that was always a lot of fun to do. That's all gone now. I actually remember before that was there and after. In addition to that, we also both participated in the Cub Scouts, at least for a while. I started in the 2nd grade, and he started in 3rd grade.
Right, and in this picture right here, we are shooting, I don't know if you're in this picture, you probably are, but we're shooting airsoft guns at targets.
Yes. Here we are. You can see us together in this one. This was part of the day camp. I don't exactly remember what was happening in this picture. But here's one where you're holding a camera, which is something you would, of course, go on to do quite a bit.
Exactly. And if you look very closely, it doesn't look exactly the same, but it kind of resembles my Nikon camera.
Yes. And here is, this was the cake baking challenge. This is the cake that you made. And it's a kind of a camping scene.
Right, yeah. If you look real closely, I mean, I don't think the details are 100% accurate, but I've got like a pathway, a cabin of some sort, some little things that like resemble trees. I also have a campfire and a lake with a bunch of fish and stuff in it.
Yes. I also made one that was kind of a swimming pool scene. You can see there we have some Jell-O in the middle for the pool and stuff like that. This was another annual tradition.
And if you look closely, there's like little bear guys on towels, and there's also a diving board too.
Yes. And then there's another picture of us both around it. Oh, yeah, here's one. This is from a field trip around the 4th grade. This is you with Drew in front of a green/blue screen, which was another thing we'd go on to use a few times later on.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And then here we are doing one of our favorite things, eating McDonald's in some place. I think that's at Northview. I'm not entirely sure.
It's gotta be.
Because the wall looks green. That's why I think that. And then here we are on the front lawn of Northview, also eating McDonald's.
Yep, I don't remember exactly what day that was, but I think it was one of our track and field days.
Yeah, I remember that being one of the track and field days. As we mentioned before, we were not able to be in the same classroom together for a few years there. But then things changed in 5th grade. That's when you started being homeschooled.
Correct. And since then, what I essentially did was I essentially did most of my schooling online. However, I went to my local schools as well as my local junior high school and my local high school for one class a day.
Yes. And the reason that started was because in fifth grade, your teacher wasn't very helpful in accommodating with things that you needed.
Correct.
And when you tried to go to the school administrators about it, there was a new principal, and administration wasn't really very helpful back then. And so because you were not doing well in that environment, and the school system was not really helping at all, your mom decided to pull you out and switch you to homeschooling.
Correct. Yeah. My mother was furious with my teacher.
Yeah, and this is another example of like how resources have hopefully changed since then, and how like at the time there just wasn't a lot. There wasn't a lot of resources. There wasn't a lot of knowledge, commonly anyway, of what people like us would have needed back then, or at least you, because I didn't have a whole lot of in-school accommodations at that time. I would get those later, but you were not getting them at the time.
No.
So it was better for you overall to leave the full-time system.
Right. And I also guarantee too, if we hadn't gotten a new principal, some of those things wouldn't have happened, because my previous principal, before the one I had in fifth grade, I wouldn't have allowed it.
Yes. But one interesting thing did come from it. And because with you out of the school system, your extracurricular classes were shifted around a bit. And so you and I ended up in the same class for a few things. And this was something that couldn't have happened since kindergarten. So I remember being in class, and I think one of the music teacher was calling your name, and I said, "Well, do you mean me?" And because sometimes she had gotten us mixed up, and he said, "No, I mean Christopher." And then I looked behind me, and there you are. And I'm like, "What are you doing in this class?" And he's like, "Oh, you're like, I'm homeschooled now." But one advantage was we were the last year of fifth graders there before Parkside opened and fifth grade moved to the middle school. So we were the last year that fifth grade was considered elementary school. Thus, we had the elementary school art teacher. And one of the assignments was a papier-mâché pig. And so you got to make two of them, because you actually did the class twice, once before you started homeschooling and once after. But the one after, you and I were in together. So we got to make what we now call the pigiggies. Here they are. So we called these the pigiggies, just adding an extra egg to the word piggies. And behold the papier-mâché pig in all his glory. This is the one that I made.
And these are the ones I made.
Yeah, and this one here, the one I've got, is the one you made in the class with me. And then that other one is the one you made in your previous art class.
Right.
So the three pigiggies were sort of representatives of us around here. We were making our videos in the years that would follow, which of course we will get to in another video. But having art class together was a pretty fun thing. And it wasn't the only time it happened. In seventh grade, it happened too. And in seventh grade, in the third quarter, that was the time, that was March 2011, and that's right when the 3DS was about to launch. And even though the 3DS has kind of been forgotten now, it was pretty exciting at the time.
It was, yeah.
I mean, we were 13. We were both very excited. I remember us sitting together in art class during the free time at the end of the period, drawing random things, and I would draw cover art for Pilot Wings Resort because I was so excited to see that game be released and to get to see it, because I really liked the airplane level in Wii Sports Resort, and that was basically that, but with missions added to it. So I remember how excited we both were to to see the 3DS being released, because it was a new frontier, 3D but without the glasses. A technology that we thought, at least I thought at the time, was going to be the next big thing. And well, it wasn't. After a few years, people got tired of 3D and just sort of forgot about it again.
Exactly. And not only that, even though I don't know if you guys know this, but in recent times, even though the 3DS is out of production, and even after the Switch 2 launched, the 3DS has started to gain popularity again.
Yeah, starting to get popularity again as a vintage system. But yeah, we were. I just wanted to throw that in there. I know that's technically a couple of years after our stories today, but it's related because it was us in an art class together.
Exactly. For example, the 3DS I have is I have the new Galaxy Purple 3DS XL, and at the time I got it, I paid about $120 for it. Now I'm seeing it as high as $400 to $500. Oh, here it is. Anyway, this is it.
Yes, you got the nice Galaxy Purple there.
Oh, yeah. Yep, this is the Galaxy Purple 3DS XL. Yep, at the time, the price was actually really good. But yeah, now the price of this thing has skyrocketed. A big part of it is because of how valuable it is, which at the time I bought it, I didn't realize. But now, because I know that I have probably the rarest item in the Nintendo handhelds, this right here is the golden jewel of my collection.
Yes. And the last thing I'll mention in this episode is our last day, or the last day for 5th grade at Northview, but also we were in 5th grade, so it was our last day of 5th grade, was also the first day for a little movie group called CMT, which we're going to tell you about in future episodes. It was the last day of school. You guys came straight over here, and we made a video. You guys were in episode 8 of the Funny Story Show, which is what led to the CMT movie group being formed. And the next 5-ish years were us just making silly videos and evolving in our content and in ourselves, which is a story for another day.
Correct.
So we want to thank you for joining us in this first episode of a little experimental podcast thing. We got a lot more stories to tell. We have a lot of really interesting things coming up, and we're gonna tell you. Most of the episodes will be like this, but with less equipment and probably virtual. So, anything else to add?
Not that I can think of.
All right, we'll see you next time, folks.